right, hello wine-drinking people. It's time for more of what I had to drink yesterday, and our Louis Jadot barrel tasting has become an annual event here at the store. And, well, they stopped doing this event for the trade several years back. I remember Jacques Lardier stopped in the store to show me the 2003s out of small bottles, and I just assumed that meant it was a very short vintage, but no, these are just how they show their barrel samples at Jadot. They bottle them in half bottles. And ever since then, you know, ask and you shall receive. I complained to the folks at Co-Brand, and they, well, send us barrel samples every year. And, hey, they sent us Philippe Marchal the last couple of years, the French portfolio manager for Co-Brand, to come and tell the story of this fantastic Negociant Eleveur in Beaune. Louis Jadot has been around for close to 200 years, since the 1850s, when this Belgian man came to Burgundy and fell in love and decided to set up shop here. And it was family-owned until 1985 when Co-Brand bought it. Co-Brand's been importing the wines to the United States since 1945, so they've had a long relationship. And when they bought it, you know, some people in Burgundy were scared. This American corporation, what were they going to do? Turned it into Coca-Cola factory. Well, you know, they said, we're not going to change anything. Jacques Lardier, the man that's been making the wine since 1970, you were going to continue to carry things on. Pierre-Henri Gagné, you were going to continue to run it, one of the family members. And, you know, they really, like I said, not much has changed. Things have just gotten better. Co-Brand's given them the money and the asset, the ability to, you know, make things better here at Louis Jadot. And the barrel tasting, to me, always a great indication of how the vintage is. Even though these wines are not finished yet, a lot of them pretty close to the finished product. When you do a barrel tasting, they take a blend of, you know, the representation of what the wine is going to be like, because in Burgundy, they don't use 100% new oak. They'll use 30% new oak, so 30% of the barrels are new. The rest of them are 1-year-old or 2-year-old, so they blend those together to give you a good idea of what the finished wine is going to be like. And 2010 is being touted as another great vintage. Hey, 2009, the vintage of the century, greatest vintage of all time in Bordeaux, according to Robert Parker. And Burgundy, also, I would consider it one of the greatest vintages of all time. But 2010, a great follow-up. And, you know, that started out with kind of bad weather. 2010 started out slow. It was really cold in the spring. The bud break took place a little later. And then the summer also not very kind to the vineyards, rainy. They had hail, which wiped out some of the crop. So they had a small crop to begin with. The good weather didn't start until September, and then it followed through to the rest of harvest. So they really had a perfect end of the season, which the end of the season is what makes the quality. The beginning, the quantity. So 2010, if you had to make a complaint, it was that not as much wine to go around. So if you want these top-level wines from 2010, we have got some of the best pricing on Louis Jadot's wine in the country. Our pre-sale price, 20% off our list, so they're not further discounted. And you get that from bottle one. And the greatest thing about Burgundy, you don't have to pay for them until the wines get here. Well, we started out with a 2009 Pernod Vergelès, and this is Clos de la Croix de Pierre. It's just a Liodea name vineyard, but it sits right next to the famous Premier Cru on Caraudu. And this wine, stunning little value, you know, under $30 for the 2010. The 2009 we have on the shelf for about 36 bucks. This wine has got great delineation, some nice lime and mineral kind of notes to the nose, and vanilla, a little bit of spice there as well, some lemon, citrus, green apple, white flowers, a really nice entry-level Burgundy. It has wonderful concentration. In the 2009, a little bit more forward, this vintage, featuring the fruit a little bit more than the terroir. The 2010 also had that vanilla spice, maybe a little bit more of an oaky quality. That's what happens when the wines are very young. They do show a little more oak in the nose, but also had that lovely bright lemon, citrus, and green apple fruit. Some limestone minerality showing there as well. Very refined and classic bouquet on this wine. Smooth texture on the tongue with layers of that mineral lemon zest and that chalky fine mineral note showing through on the finish. Lovely elegance and spice here, and a great value, once again, at under $30. Excellent juice. All right, the Beaune Grèves, La Croix Blanc. And the Grèves is situated in the northern part of the Beaune appellation, and the soils here, sandy, small stones. That's what Grèves means. And this wine had a lovely flinty, minerally note to the nose, ripe, delicious pineapple and pear fruit, very forward and seductive, bright lemon, citrus, and green apple on the tongue with a tangy, mineral-laced finish, really long and wonderful balance here. Nice structure, very well built. Even these Premier Cru wines you want to hold on to for a little bit in 2010. They really need a little time to come together further. firmly. I tasted all these wines on the second day. I left a little bit in the glass, and still showing excellent on the second day. The top level wines even better, and you can just tell these wines need a little time in the bottle. The Meursault Charmes was up next, and the Charmes, because of their lower position, is a little richer than the Le Perriers, which is above it, but a wonderful Premier Cru, ripe, rich peach and apricot fruit, light smoky note to the nose, or like fresh buttered toast quality, the whetstone minerality as well. Fat and rich on the tongue, the most California-esque of all of the appellations in Burgundy to me. You know, that triangle of Chassagne, Polini, and Meursault, creating the best white wines in all of the Côte de Beaune. This wine had a lovely richness on the palate as well. Apple, candy, lemon, citrus, lovely buttery toast quality coming through on the finish, and that minerality shining through as well. A bit chalky and dry, but better on the second day even, which is a great sign. Most excellent juice. The Polini Montrachet La Garine, one of the great Premier Crus of Polini, and rise very close to La Foletière, roughly halfway between Meursault and Montrachet. Lovely chalky soils here, lovely minerality, kind of a wet rock note to the nose, lovely toasted oak spice and almond character, white peach, lemon drop candy, very concentrated, rich bouquet. Continued to evolve on the second day there, really rich with a firm underbelly of acidity, this chalky limestone minerality showing through, a bit hard-edged on the finish right now. This is a classic vintage for Burgundy. It needs some time. I recommend putting this in the cellar for at least 5 years before you touch it. Like I said, amazing still on the second day. Most excellent juice. And then the showstopper. We had a few 09 sneak into this 2010 tasting. 2009 Batmont, Batard Montrachet, the largest of the Grand Crus of all the whites. This wine is stunning stuff, and on the second day, just amazing. Toasted kind of matchstick nose and nutty quality, fresh buttered toast, lemon drop candy, fruit, citrus, really concentrated and rich on the nose. Any spice and a really lovely ripe fruit on the palate, creamy texture, toasty oak spice, just had so much of everything, so many layers coming through on the finish. This wine needs 10 years in your cellar. I'd love to have a bottle of this a decade from now. That honeyed, chalky character on the finish showing even greater on the second day. Killer juice, and well, it's a little expensive, but I mean, you know, like I said, for a wine you can keep for 10, 20 years or more, fairly priced at $250, $75, whatever it is. All right, the Louis Jadot Chateau de Jacques Moulin à Vent, 2010, back to the 2010s. This is a Cru Beaujolais. There's 10 Cru vineyards or villages in Beaujolais, Moulin à Vent being one of my favorites here, and well, different soils here. You have granite soils, which don't work as well with Pinot, but very good with Gamay. These wines have good longevity too. These 2010s, I would guess you could keep at least a decade in your cellar. Very fruity, some lovely red cherry, wild strawberry fruit like showing on the nose. Pretty violet floral aromas as well. Lovely silky smooth texture on the tongue with good structure though still. You know, that granite minerality showing through on the finish. A classic vintage for Beaujolais. Again, they call 2009 the greatest vintage ever. 2010 could be just as good for Beaujolais. And then the Moulin à Vent Rouge Grasse, which is a single vineyard in Moulin à Vent that they have. This wine just having quite a bit more structure. You really notice the length of the finish on this wine, but very similar nose. You notice that granite-like rock minerality, wild strawberry fruit, kind of a raw steak note to this wine and some fresh flowers. And like I said, really just a bit longer on the finish. You really notice this wine at the end a little bit more. A little bit tightly wound here at the moment too, but really good stuff for a Beaujolais. Excellent juice. The Beaune Clos de Couchereau Premier Cru, and this vineyard is located on the top of the slope, and this is a great exposure. This wine really showing nicely a light gravelly minerally note to the red cherry and strawberry fruit, kind of smoky sauvage note as well there. Fine tannins, very well built, showing that minerality on the finish as well. And these 2010s need time. This wine, like I said, just showing some nice structure and really good fruit, really good balance as well. Everything in proportion. An excellent bottle of wine. $36, maybe the best value of the whole tasting. The Pommard Rougean Premier Cru. This consists of 2 parcels that they blend together at Jadot, and it's a wonderful exposure. One of the top sites in all of Pommard Rougean, meaning red because of the red iron soils, and you really notice that minerality in the wine as well. Red cherry and red plum fruit, some smoky bacon fat notes, fresh earth, kind of a minty herbal note as well going on there. Plump and ripe fruit on the palate. Lots of tannins, Pommards, big wines, and noticing again that minerality that iron-rich soil provides. A really excellent juice though, really long finish, everything holding together in balance. Most excellent juice, and it's $65, man. A killer little little value. The Gevrey Chambertin Clos Saint Jacques, always a showstopper. This vineyard is one of the top vineyard sites in Gevrey Chambertin. Could it be elevated to a Grand Cru? No, because Gevrey Chambertin already has so many Grand Crus, so many important vineyards there. This wine has kind of a toffee note. You notice the oak in that a bit of that Sauvage showing through, black raspberry fruit, exotic oriental spices, and a light minty note. Really lovely complexity here on the nose. Really big and chewy on the palate. This wine's got layers of spice and that minerality, bright red berry fruit, firm hand of acidity. A bit tightly wound right now. These 2010s, some people were not digging on this wine because just, in a great vintage, Burgundy does not show its stuff immediately. It needs some time, as this wine does. On the second day, this wine was even better. That is a sign of how great this 2010 vintage is. This will reward you if you put it in your cellar for 5 or 10 years. I promise. Most excellent juice here. And then the 2009s, we had a little Chory Le Bon, and this wine, really pretty stuff. Red cherry, raspberry, pomegranate fruit, a hint of brown spice, a little gravelly mineral note. Really smooth and silky on the palate. Some good structure here, though, but these 09s have this lovely precocious forward nature. Really good to drink right now. Great little value at under $30. Chambolle Musigny, one of my favorite village wines. The gravel and pebbles have a great influence on the subtle and fine structure of these Chambolle wines. This wine's got a lovely, pretty spiced floral notes, almost citrus quality to the raspberry and strawberry fruit, though. Some light mint, really exotic nose. Really lovely nuance on the palate, too. One of the things I love about Chambolle Musigny, it doesn't have a real big, in terms of structure and tannins, but just has lovely nuance, and these little flavors seem to go on your palate. Excellent juice, this 2009 village wine. And then the Clos Vougeot, the big boy. Jadot's got 3 different parts of Clos Vougeot. Sometimes they bottle them separate. When they're very distinct, when they're not, they blend them together. 2009 was just such a vintage-driven vintage. They bottled them all together. This wine had a lovely spiced red cherry fruit, light smoky and minty quality to this. Very rich and nuanced bouquet. This wine really needed to open up on the second day. Unfortunately, my glass got knocked over and broke last night, so I didn't get to try this wine on the second day, but I could just tell, man, it really needed to open up. Lots of tannins, but big and ripe, just like all these 2009s. They're so ripe, you don't notice the tannin until you're into the second glass, and then you're like, wow, these wines are tannic, but still very drinkable. This wine's got a really long finish to it. It needs a little bit of time, but most excellent juice, the Clos Vougeot 2009. Thanks again, Philippe, for coming down and hosting the tasting with us, and everything that's available from 2010 will be on this review, as well as what's left from 2009. I'm your host, Andrew Lampasoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.